Only when he learned he tried to push out the shadow self. He tried to live normally. When you try to live normally and you keep a side of you out there, you are not aligned, and two, you don't. Kaijus, what's up? It's your boy Kaiju Kong, aka 2K. Alright, so it's gonna be another Q&A session, and today's question comes from a dude named Mohammed Aziz Atiyah. Shout out to you, my friend. Thank you very much for today's question. I'm sure it's gonna provide a lot of value for the listeners out there. So Mohammed basically asked me on Instagram to offer my unique perspective on shadow work by Carl Jung. Now, many of you wondering, shadow work, what the hell is that? And how does it help me, right? Shadow work, for those of you who don't know, don't worry, it's not some dark, magic, sinister thing that you do behind closed doors, secret society shit. Neither is it work that you do in the shadows, low-key, and then you conquer the world, or you come up with a breakthrough like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, whatever. None of that. Shadow work, in simpler terms, is basically... Let's start off with what the shadow is. The shadow is a term coined by Swiss psychologist Carl Jung, and he basically defined the shadow as the unconscious part of your personality. That's why unconscious is the thing in the shadows, whereas the light is your conscious side. But not only that, unconscious part of your personality that you disowned or neglected. Now that's interesting. The reason why it was disowned or neglected was why? Why did you choose to disown it? Why did you choose to neglect it, right? Imagine this shadow side of you as the basement of your house. It's the dark recesses that you kind of want to forget. And you keep things in the basement, the possessions that you think you no longer need, you don't want anybody else to see that you have. It's kind of like the skeletons in the closet, right? So that's basically what the shadow side is. Now, why did you neglect or disown parts of your personality? Because society told you to do so. Like, for example, the shadow side is built from when you're young in your family. For example, one of the examples that I read up on the internet was that, for example, you're a sensitive boy. Let's say you got into a situation or your dad scolded you and then you started crying. And then your dad told you, stop crying. That's not how real men act. Real men don't cry. So that reinforced that sense of belief that if I am a boy, I want to be a man, and real men don't cry, therefore if I want to be a real man, I don't cry. So despite you being sensitive, and everybody is unique as a person, all of us are unique. And the misconception, let me address this first. The misconception is that the shadow side seems to be like dark side, therefore is it evil? Not necessarily. Shadow side is just, it's not evil, it's just a part of you that you chose to hide, that you chose to lock away behind closed doors. So your shadow side can actually be my light side, and my light side can be your shadow side. For example, when I was younger, I was super rowdy, and I was I was very rowdy and adventurous. But throughout my life, let's say I got like this scar, I broke my wrist, and usually the friends that I bring on whatever fun stuff that I get into always end up hurt. And I've seen this time and time again. So the belief in my head told me that whenever I get into something, whenever I play in the playground with somebody, either I was a given, but they had a chance of getting hurt together with me. So it hurt a lot of my own relationships, and I started not being as adventurous as I was before. So that adventurous, rowdy side of me, I kind of I chose to hide it away and become a sort of nice guy, or a good guy, a goody two-shoes. It's only like a couple years later when I realized, like, is it better to be good, or is it better to be whole? Because I can live my life not hurting anybody, but I will be good. But then somehow at the back, the dark recesses of your mind, at the back of your head, you're always living like you're not aligned with who you are. You look at yourself in the mirror, you barely even recognize yourself. Confidence comes from knowing that you align with yourself. And as long as you're not aligned with who you are, and you know it yourself deep down, especially if you're self-aware, you can't really confidently walk out in the world. And that was what I felt at the time. So instead of being a good person or a good man, might as well strive to be whole. And that's what shadow work is. Shadow work is basically integrating your light conscious self and your dark unconscious self. But many times people don't want to go there. People don't want to go there because it hurts, because it's scary. Are you afraid of the dark? Of course, back then when you were a kid, you were. Perhaps some of you till this day, to a certain degree, are afraid of the dark. But is the dark itself inherently dangerous? Of course not. Or is it something that you believe is in the dark that, if there in the first place, might hurt you? You see, believe and might, these things are very conditional. It's not a fact. The dark itself is not inherently dangerous. It is your mind that somehow convinced you that it is. And if there is something that exists in the dark, if anything at all, it could, yes, hurt you. But what happens if in this case that thing that is in the dark, in the shadows, is actually the thing that can save you, is the answers your question, and that can solve all of your problems? Because some of you're coming up the same lesson over and over again, the same problems in your life. You hit a plateau and you want to break through. Sometimes to break through, you gotta change yourself. You cannot approach, Albert Einstein always said, insanity is defined by doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. So if you approach that problem with the same you never evolved, you never changed the solution, you never tweaked it. How do you expect it to change, right? So somehow, what is the change that you need? Sometimes you don't have to look further from yourself. The answers lie already within. It's there, you hid it bare in the basement of your mind. And sometimes going down in the basement, when you're kids, forget it. We avoid the basement at all costs. We come up with all crazy stories of monsters and things living down there. But even as adults, when you need something, you remember like, I got the drill, or I got the something down there in the basement, I need to go get it. And then the light bulb's busted, you gotta go down there with a flashlight. It still sends chills up your spine. It's the same thing with shadow work. It's not the easiest, and many times, I forgot who coined it, I think it's Friedrich Nietzsche. He said, when you stare at the darkness too long, or you stare into the eyes of the monster, sometimes the darkness stares back into you. I brought along a special guest who will basically share her experiences in the spiritual world, because she's been there longer than I have. She's gone to India for several reasons, and to know if it's like, how advantageous is it, and the dangers of getting into shadow work and all that. So let's bring her on.
Hi everyone, I'm Mónica.
You can start off like what you feel like shadow work is and how it has shown up in people around, like the lives of people around you.
Yeah, as you said, there's a lot of people who are already and have been doing this work for so long. They just didn't coin it or didn't call it this. So it's, I think, to put it in simple terms, it's just basically working on yourself. It is helpful to understand why do you get so pissed or triggered when someone has a certain reaction to politics, for example, and this can all be traced back from, this done by therapists and professionals, traced back to some interaction you had during your childhood. For example, when someone would have a very aggressive reaction to politics or to a politician when you were watching the news with your parents, and then every time the topic comes up, you basically link it to a bunch of emotions around you that are not comfortable. And so as a kid, you would be maybe scared, you wouldn't feel safe around your parents. So that basically you carry it out to adulthood, and you feel that tension when you're still when you're already an adult and you're still having those interactions with people. So because this can be super uncomfortable and unproductive when you're trying to live your life, people are trying to make it as like you can work on it as to address it and make you feel more comfortable, more confident. Actually, one of the reasons that people get a lot into this is for romantic relationships, because apparently we're not so good at it. So there's a lot of couples that break up because they don't know how to communicate. They don't know how to explain that that's the weird reaction they had to that situation was because the parents used to have the same reaction. So it's this type of work and the why, questioning why, and go back as far as your kid years, justifying a certain reaction that you have now, and then obviously trying to dissipate it. So trying to, okay, now I understand why it happened, maybe I don't have to feel that scared.
Unless you make the unconscious conscious, it's gonna control you and it's gonna decide your fate. Because sometimes you do things subconsciously. You know, we're humans, and human beings, we like to systemize everything. So sometimes you make a snap decision based on what? Did you actually question why you chose this over that? Not necessarily. Sometimes then it's your subconscious that controls you. As I said, the sensitive boy back then, when he grows up, he gets irritated when he sees a guy crying on the TV or in front of him. So he says, why am I triggered by this? Then he goes down the continuous whys until he finds that the core reason for the trigger, which is back in his childhood when his father told him real men don't cry. And for many years he's trying to put that sensitive side of him to the shadow side. Many people stop off at the identification part. They ask the continuous whys until they identify that specific thing that was the reason for the trigger, and then they stop like, okay, cool. Then they use it as an excuse.
To blame it. Yeah, okay. So people use the shadow work a lot to blame it on someone / something.
But that's not shadow work in my opinion.
It's not
that's
work,
shadow identification.
But you're woke if you say that. So you're aware.
Yeah,
but
but many times, like I did a video. In that case, you're woke. But then you're woke. You're just like this. You're woke with your eyes up. But what's the purpose of waking up? You gotta get up and do action.
That's the work.
That's the identification. Just like you just like open your eyes. But then if you're like, oh cool,
it can be dangerous.
I'm seeing what it is. Cool, yeah. But did you change your life? No, you're still in bed. So.
A lot of people also go to therapy, but they end up not doing the work because, of course, the professional will try to make you get up and do the uncomfortable things because it's not. I think the fun part, at least for people like me and you, would be to address it in a way that, oh, that's where it began. That's so interesting. But then you try to, get over that. But that requires a lot of effort because it will make you face all of your demons, all of your insecurities, all of the triggers, all of the childhood emotions that you felt that were so big for such a small kid. Now you kind of feel them and it doesn't even seem rational because you're an adult, you're independent, but you still feel like that. So it's super uncomfortable to actually do the work.
Exactly.
But people usually just look for a way out of saying, this is why I'm a bitch, because that happened.
Yeah, and then they just stay like that. You see, like in high school, when you're a freshman, you're kind of picked on by the seniors or the higher levels. But then once you become the senior, you kind of feel like you have the power to pick on the lower levels. It's kind of annoying. Just because you're treated that way doesn't mean you necessarily have to treat other people down. Like later on, you don't have to treat the people who are in your situation the same way. It's kind of like when I was a leader at work. When you were in the bottom, your leaders treated you like shit. Somehow when you're the leader, you always say like, oh, when I'm a leader, I'm going to be better. Many times that's not the case, and I've seen this with a lot of colleagues of mine. They worked below, and then once they became the leader, they kind of became even shittier than they became resentful, and they treated the employees with even more disdain and more, unfair and injustice. And I'm like, then what the hell was this about? And it's always the same thing. People say, oh, I'm going to do better when I am in power, but not necessarily.
And you think this can be changed with shadow work? Because what you're saying is basically generational trauma, which is another term that people in spiritual world use a lot. So I'm curious, you think that can be
What's generational trauma?
This basically means that from generation to generation, and this happens everywhere, doesn't just every country, every type of family, there are certain behaviors and certain reactions that go down and they never get addressed. So you have the extreme of like a violent father or a drunk father, and usually that passes on to one of the kids.
And then the kids pass on to the kids.
And because they never addressed the issue and they kind of grew up with that being the norm, they pass on that. So of course it's an extreme, but it can be just the fact that crying is not normal, it's not good, or it's not seen as a...
So yeah, and then that same kid will pass the same belief on to his kids.
Exactly.
And same to his kids.
So our millennials now, we are the ones apparently are breaking generational trauma, meaning that we are now doing the work. We're going to therapy. We're trying to understand why do we have these reactions. Why was my mom so... she was neglecting me so much emotionally. Why do I feel so hurt about this? Because if we understand... Hopefully, if we understand that this is happening and that they didn't mean it like that and we can get through this, hopefully when we have our own kids, our own family, we will be able to do better.
As they say, the old dogs can't, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. That is a limiting belief. Who says so? You see? That's a belief taught to us by society. Who says old dogs can't learn new tricks? Right? Anyway...
So the chances are lower, but still possible. That's the thing.
Yeah, but then as I say, like throughout your life, you never stop kicking until you stop kicking until you're buried 6 feet underground. I've seen so many people 80, 90 years old still learning a new skill. And you never, yeah, exactly. You can always evolve this identity. That's the power of the ego. You know, the ego always tells you to wanting to be validated by society, always wanting to show the good side. But if you're always in the ego and you hide the things about you that are perceived to be bad, you're never going to be whole. You're going to be just good. You know, they always say, like Jordan Peterson says, you got to let the beast out. There is no virtue in being a good man. You gotta be good at being a man. You gotta be a man capable of violence. Because a man who's not capable of violence, if he is compliant or if he's good, it's not because he is good, it's because he's weak. It's like a tiger with no claws. Tiger with no claws, he's good because he's virtually weak, he's powerless. But then if you have the claws, if you have the power, you're a strong man, you are capable of incorporating your dark side and using it to your advantage. Because sometimes you just have to, in that case, like for example, there's a story of Hercules, the Disney's Hercules. When he was young, that super strength caused him to be an outcast.
What a geek, destructo boy. Maybe we should call him Hercules.
So he kind of felt like an outcast, but only when he learned he tried to push out the shadow self, he tried to live normally. When you try to live normally and you keep a side of you out there, you are not aligned, and two, you don't stand out. We're born unique for a reason. In Christianity, they say that, what did they say? They say, God did not give you a spirit of fear. He gave you a spirit of power, of love, and self-control. Same with Hercules. If he didn't address that shadow self that he tried to keep locked out, which was his super strength, he would not have become the god that he became in the movie. He would not become famous in the movie. So you just have to work on that perceived weakness of yours in a way that can be praised, that can be applauded. And if not everyone can applaud it, you will always have critics, you'll always have haters. But I'd rather have haters doing something that aligns to who I am than having haters doing something that I'm not. Because either way, you'll always have haters doing something that you're not, doing something that you are. So might as well have haters doing something that you are, right? Here's an example, and many guys in the Sigma male sphere, you know him already. He's a fictional Sigma male. John Wick. Why did I bring him up? Because it's very classic. You see, when he's retired or when he was just living a normal life, he has a nice house on the top. But then what happens when he's called to war? Where does he go? He goes to the basement. That's where he gets his gold. That's where he gets his guns. That's where he gets his weapons. It's the same thing. Many times for you guys to really... John Wick without his guns, without his weapons, without his gold, he's just a normal citizen. Maybe he looks rich with a nice house. But the reason why he is John Wick is because of the things that he has in his basement. Sometimes for you guys, the reason that makes you who you are, or the only way you can evolve and the only way you can truly capitalize on the reason why you are here in the world in the first place, is because of the things that you've kept in the basement of your mind. So go down there, my friends. Real men don't cry. Who does it serve? Does it really serve you? Does it serve your father? It doesn't serve anyone. It's just a societal construct. It's just a belief that men do this. Men wear blue. Women wear pink. But actually, for those of you who don't know, it was actually the other way around back then.
So there's a time and place for everything.
There's a time and place for everything.
So that, crying is not bad, but it's also not...
kid, if he knew how to use it, because it's the way that you were born. So if you use it, it comes more naturally. So that guy could become one of the best, who knows, by psychiatrist. He's more empathetic. He feels people on a deeper level.
And that's shadow work. It's recognizing when you can use those.
So that's what I said, like
traits.
how shadow work can help you. One is to identify, because identifying that you have the problem is already, they say, 50% of the solution.
I think it's important to understand that most times, if not always, you don't know why exactly. You just have an idea because of the data that you have. You have a database of experiences, of stories. The more you grow older, the more you see things from a different perspective. But the more you ask why without having the professional help, following Instagram and Facebook and YouTube posts from non-professionals, so they're coaches, they're whatever, gurus, and they give examples and you think, oh, maybe I am like that as well. You don't know. You start having disagreements and really tough conversations with family members. Some people start cutting people out of their lives because of this, out of like something that you're just guessing. And not only that, you get super deep into the shadow, into the darkness, because you get so obsessed on fixing yourself because something is wrong with you, because you have a bad reaction to, I don't know, politics, like I said. So I think people start looking for problems where they don't even exist. You're a complex human being, and that's okay. Sometimes you get into a mood, and that's okay. You don't know why. You don't have to know the why to
analyze everything. Yeah.
What I would call the dark side of doing this. It's like you work so much on yourself that you're never whole. You feel like you're never ready for the relationship. You're never deserving of the relationship. You feel like you're broken because everyone tells you this is wrong with you, and you have to work on that and that as well. And you don't trust people that easily. That's an issue.
So they only feel like they can get into a relationship if they're enlightened like the Buddha.
Yes. This is not... I've read so many times that it's basically, it comes from the cliche, you can never love anyone else if you don't love yourself first, or if you don't love, which actually it's not true, but it can be, we all know what's the meaning
they always
behind
say, like,
it.
you gotta heal yourself first before you love someone, otherwise it's like forgot the name of that partnership, like... When
like
you get together as a trauma bond, yeah.
You also know that term, okay. That's another example, but that's the thing. No one is explaining or defining healing or a healed person. Is it Buddha? Is it enlightened? I don't know. So you isolate yourself way more than you should because you're working on yourself so much that you're so scared to test yourself in new waters with actual real people because, oh shit, what if it happens again?
Many people, they go down this rabbit hole of trying to weed out the weeds in the garden. Same thing, this exactly the same metaphor. In your garden, you will always have weeds. So might as well enjoy the garden. Might as well walk around the garden. There's a weed, one here, one there. It's fine. Does it affect the overall beauty of the garden? Not necessarily. Pick it out when you see a lot of weeds, yes. But when you feel like it's good enough to live your life, just live your life. Enjoy it. Have a relationship, try out the career that you've wanted to try, go out on a limb and open the business or try the project that you wanted to try. Also like a house, garden's that, house. Many times you clean the shelves and everything, but there's always dust that's flying, and the dust will always settle on the table. And if you're so picky and trying to make your house look perfect, you're always going to be dusting, my friend. You're not going to be living in the house, so it's the same thing with life. Well, you're not perfect, I'm not perfect, Monica's not perfect, but you still live your life.
The one that I think it's the most dangerous, I don't know what's your experience with that, is that a lot of people talk about this as if they were professionals, had credentials for that, and they had the experience. Sometimes they have the personal experience. The only
people I listen to are those who have what they say they are teaching. Because in the end, it's somehow like, the majority of how it goes is like the blind leading the blind.
Whatever worked for those people, it's not necessarily going to work for you. So exactly. People are different, and they treat it as if it was like medicine.
Exactly. All of us are different. All of us have been hurt to varying degrees, respectively.
And they're not professionals. They don't know how to handle it.
And they're not professionals, exactly. Unless they're psychologists. Even psychologists, they get things wrong. So they're not. True. Maybe they figured out a way to heal their own selves or whatever, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they can heal you. Move on in a way that you improve your life, like step by step. Just take it step by step. You don't...
But take the risk, like do something.
Take the risk, yeah. Because sometimes I know, like, even myself back in the day, being adventurous, rowdy, like this, in terms of confidence, in terms of delegation, being a lone wolf. If you approach all of those all at the same time, you're going to be overwhelmed. So the way I did it was to do it one step at a time. Okay, what do? I addressed the adventurous side. I incorporated more of the adventurous side slowly into my life, getting to safe things first, doing things alone first. The reason why I got people hurt. Why? Because I didn't know what I was doing. Then, what's the solution? Know what you're doing. So now, when I do spearfishing, when I get into adventurous activities, I get into them first alone. I study how to do it first by myself. Once you become a pro, and you know that you're never going to get hurt. Once you bring someone on board, they're most likely not going to get hurt anymore. So I'm like, oh, cool. Why didn't I think about that before? Why did I have to go down this, like, neglect it and put it in this? And actually, I just thought about it now, but one of the classic examples, especially for Sigma males, is Batman. Batman is the epitome of the integration of the light side and the dark side. The light side is Bruce Wayne, his conscious side, when he is in society, in the light. But in the dark, in the basement, in the cave, he's Batman. Many of you will say Batman is his true identity and Bruce Wayne is just a mask. That's exactly what it is. Sometimes many of you, your true self, like John Wick, his true self is what he kept in the basement. What he does at night. And the thing in the light, your conscious self that you put on, like it's a mask, it's a persona that you put on in front of other people when you're in the Matrix or you're walking amongst society. So if you know how to integrate that healthily, because well, Bruce Wayne used this pain when his parents died. He channeled that pain. He could have channeled it and became like a bum. Well, he's a rich dude. He can virtually mask his pain through alcohol, overconsumption of drugs or whatever, holidays all over the world, but he used it to train, to give him the best things, to give him gadgets, to make him a suit, to make him the Batmobile, to construct him the Batcave in order for him to help other people and to stop whatever caused that trigger back in the past that caused him his own pain to never happen to other people. So that's the healthy way of looking at it. And let's talk about the destructive way of doing it. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Same person, different identities. Dr. Jekyll's the light. In society, he's Dr. Jekyll. But then in the dark, he's Mr. Hyde because of like the potion that he drank. But in the end, because he did not integrate it properly, as Carl Jung said, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it's going to control you and it will determine your fate. In the end of the story, spoilers alert, but Mr. Hyde killed himself, therefore he killed Dr. Jekyll. As I said, if you don't do shadow work, you're just light. If you're just the light, you're just vanilla. You have no voice, you have no really personality, in my opinion, and there's nothing really unique about you compared to everyone else. Because the conscious side of you, the light side of you, was developed and it comes out based on your need to follow society. Therefore, the more similar you are to society, the more dissimilar you are to who your self is, your uniqueness, because society always works on a least common denominator type of thing. So the more you subscribe to that and mold yourself to that thing, the less of an individual you actually are.
I think you're just weaker. Yeah.
Yeah, you become like the nice guy.
Work, yeah, you're weak as a person because if you don't even know how to face your own shadow, that means you're weak. Every time you have a challenge, you have an interaction with someone, you're gonna give up on that relationship, on that job because you just don't like it, because you throw a fit, because it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
If you walk away from at every opportunity because it gets icky and uncomfortable and scary, that's exactly doing the shadow work. It's understanding that maybe I can go a little bit beyond. Imagine the boy that was not allowed to cry ever. He's gonna face a lot of struggles in relationship, as in this usually extends more than just tears. It's being vulnerable and opening up. If he doesn't do that, he cannot meet someone at a deeper level. So relationships become a really big challenge for that person. And so this does not mean that the person has to cry at every emotional situation. The practice is every time that he feels like something is bothering him and he needs to open up about it, but he represses it. He needs to be uncomfortable enough to start opening up. And this might sound very easy for someone who's used to do this, but for someone who's never done this, never trusted anyone to do this, this really, like, physically it is cringy, it is uncomfortable, it is scary. So I think because it's not only just one thing, it's usually a bunch of them, we need to like pinpoint, like, where do I start, like what's the main issue. And this takes so long, this takes a lot of patience and a lot of work. That's just my 2 cents.
Remember, Batman only became Batman when he was what, maybe teens, early 20s, perhaps? I don't know the canon, you guys can tell me. But it took years of training from little Bruce Wayne till then. So it's not like you're gonna become, like, you want to be Batman, you're gonna become Batman tomorrow. No, it takes like a few steps to integrate the light and the dark, to understand why your pain, why you're hurt, and to channel that hurt and pain into fueling your actions. Use it as fuel. That's the best type of emotions. Positive, negative, use them as fuel. Because, as I say, like the light and the dark, channel that, integrate them, because as they always say, a house divided is a house that shall fall. So might as well integrate everything. Yin is not yin without the yang, and yang is not yang without the yin. It's kind of like in this setup, you see, behind it's mostly like a yin aspect, but then there's a bit of yang, dark. Here it's mostly kind of dark, but then there's a little thing of yin. It's the same. And funnily enough, we're dressed pretty much kind of like black and yellow. What a coincidence.
Once you accept the shadow side, the dark self, the parts that not only may be seen as inappropriate or bad in general terms in society or by your family members, the more you accept those sides that you might be working on or not, the less people have like a hold of you. They cannot surprise you anymore. They cannot accuse you of something that you have not been aware yourself before. So you don't even take it as personally as before, because it's something that you already recognize. Like, you're just projecting whatever reaction you're having of that's mean dark side of myself. But I'm working on that. I'm aware that I have that going on, and I'm addressing it. So it's not, you don't have anything on me.
You don't have any hold. You're not like blindsided by society or your relationships. And people actually give you more slack once you tell them like, I know, but thank you for bringing it up. I know, I'm trying to work on it. It's not like I have this because then you give an excuse. No, you tell them that I know it was something about my father or something about my past, but don't worry, I'm working on it.
Because you know what's going on in your own
inner
self. You have less tendency of judging harshly other situations that have nothing to do with you.
Or acting out on a whim by saying like, oh, real men don't cry. But then you kind of stop yourself like, wait, what is the nuance? What's the specific context in this? Does this boy need to hear it now? Why does he need to hear it?
This aggressively, like my dad told me? Yeah,
because if he's crying because his mom died, well, what can you do? Doing shadow work is a way to heal yourself. And when you heal yourself, you can help to at least, if not heal others, you can help make life much better for those around you.
Breaking generational trauma, exactly.
Breaking generational trauma. So you stop the trauma at you. You have that freedom. That is the thing that makes sigmas, lone wolves. Autonomy, freedom. So sometimes you just gotta get rid of the things that control you. Because like if you're so good in society's eyes, as I have written here on my arm, what profit a man to gain the whole world yet lose his own soul? You can be all light. You can be all good in society's eyes. You can gain the world, fame, wealth, popularity, women, all the things, luxuries. But if you have not integrated your dark side and you have not integrated who you truly, authentically are, no wonder people are not happy nowadays, even with all of these achievements, because they're not acting from their truest, motives and from their true selves. So I hope this helped you guys, my friends. This is very long, I understand, but if you're here until this point, thank you very much. Shout out to you. And do like the content if it made you laugh, provide you some insight, some information, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm making this fast because I know that most people don't really listen, and we will click out of this video. So basically, this is Kaiju Kong signing off.
Mónica Martini.
Alright, so thank you very much for joining us, my friends. Till next time, stay strong.
Bye.